This is Great FM, a podcast series by Great HR. Produced by Timber Media.
You know, every year the workplace seems to invent a new vocabulary, and this isn't geo-specific. This happens world over. And I mean, we've all heard quiet quitting, bare minimum Mondays, career cushioning. Honestly, the list is endless and ever growing. Welcome to Great FM, everyone. Ahalya here. And we've got a lot to unpack in today's episode as we're going to attempt to decode these workplace trends that have got every organization and a generation by the horns. In fact, the latest additions to the workplace dictionary, you know, from revenge quitting and conscious unbossing to job hugging, have us all wondering what's actually going on, what's on everyone's minds when they come to work. And it's easy to dismiss these as, you know, social media buzzwords that get thrown around in Instagram posts, but they do often point to something much deeper, a phenomenon that surround us, things that are happening in real time, right? Because behind every viral workplace trend is actually a shift in how people think about careers, leadership, ambition, and job security. So in the episode, we're separating workplace hype from workplace reality. Which of these trends deserve our serious attention? Which are symptoms rather than problems? And what do they really reveal about the future relationship between organizations and the talent that they hire? Helping us do all of this is Raj Lakshmi Saikia, VP Learning Innovation Capabilities and Insights at Synchrony. She's been recognized on the top 40 HR leaders in India list, as well as the SHRM top 10 HR influencers list. And, you know, in her profile, also a self-confessed social media enthusiast. So I'm sure she's going to have some interesting insights. Thanks for joining us, Raj Lakshmi. How are you?
Thank you, Ayla. I love your introduction because all of what you said is pretty much doing the rounds. So happy to talk about this.
Yeah, you know, I think every day I wake up at least and I find that there's a new buzzword or phrase that is doing the rounds, and it's something that I need to be aware of. And if I need to be aware of it, honestly, every HR professional in the world needs to be aware of it. So let's dive right in. Why do you think these trends are resonating so strongly with, you know, the larger workforce of today? And do you think they're genuinely new behaviors, or are they workplace issues that were never really solved and are just being repackaged in a more relatable way? I think that's always an interesting distinction to start with.
These are buzzwords, right? And clearly the buzzwords, I do believe that it doesn't come out of nowhere. It usually catch on because, you know, you would have had a significant number of people talking about it in the past, or there have been changes in the ways of working with which everyone's coping with. And in the process, there are few who cope very well and there are those who struggle, right? Also, we have to appreciate that things are changing way faster than what organizations are getting the time to adapt to. And therefore, there'll always be that moment of catch up. The reason why buzzwords are becoming more and more popular in the last few years, I think this is the social media audience or generation, if I could say, where we do hear of things way too soon and way too fast, which is why now there's a channel for popularizing things. So buzzwords have come up because of that. It's not like organizational issues or human issues or challenges have not been there. I think that's been there forever. Social media and the channels and technology and communication, the way it happens today, makes buzzword really, really upfront and out there. A few reasons I do believe why buzzwords are catchy is because they often validate a shared experience. These are evidences of experiences that have been seen by many people in different pockets. And therefore, when you put a word, it's just easy to resonate, it's easy to catch on, and it's easy to spread. That's the downside of it, right? I do believe while buzzwords are good to elevate symptoms or issues that need to be addressed and solved, sometimes it's also, bringing up things that are not necessarily issues, but it's just the channels allow us to talk about it so much that there's so much content, right? I think that's one thing that we all should be wary about as well. What do you catch on to, and how much of your own study do you do before you say, oh, this is a trend? Buzzwords are also memorable, right? It is easier when you package something into a word instead of trying to explain the nuances of a situation. For example, if you talk about conscious unbossing, it's basically the style of leadership that exists in organization. And there are folks who are for it and are folks who are away from it and don't want it. That's the conversation, right? If I had to go and talk about the nuances and explain leadership, I think one, it'll be way too boring. And secondly, it'll take a lot of time to land what it really means in different forums. So the moment you put a buzzword around it, it catches like wildfire, and that's what's happening. So when people talk about it, then when there's more awareness about something, I think things get resolved also faster. They get the attention. And in a way, in the larger scheme of things, that's the positive effect of having these buzzwords.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the fact that you brought up this double-edged sword nature of a buzzword is very relevant to the conversation today. But I do think, to your point, they just make people feel seen, make them feel heard, and gives them the opportunity to recognize something that they've been experiencing but maybe couldn't put a word to it, right? So, today we're also going to get your thoughts on some of these buzzwords, Raj Lakshmi. And I think, why don't we just start with something that everyone's heard, which is revenge quitting, right? Most people sort of focus on this dramatic resignation itself. But like you said, every word has a story behind it that is actually quite common and has been experienced through decades now. Isn't the real story everything that actually happens before the resignation, right? So how can HR get ahead of the revenge quit, per se?
You're absolutely right. Revenge quitting is actually the outcome. It's not really the event, right? And it mostly with professionals, revenge quitting would be the last stage, right? And I'm hoping that most of us would have already tried to reach out, resolve, ask questions, etc. As talent HR professionals, what is really important is that do we have the right channels and, ways to find out how employees are feeling? For example, measuring sentiment analysis, right? Continuously. 15, 20 years ago, we would have heard of employee surveys being an annual exercise. But, today, organizations have ways to listen to their employees more frequently, almost on a weekly, or there are even some tools that talk about pulses, capturing the pulse of the employee on a daily basis. And those are important signals or data points that the HR organization can look into to see what's happening, what are the real issues, and are there any things that, that needs to be surfaced and taken up for discussion for a, higher resolution. The other thing that can happen, in organizations, especially large organizations, HR is an enabler, right? HR does not really have access to manage employees on a day-to-day. It's the manager. So how does the system treat manager capability building in a business is very, very important. Like, do all the managers know what their role is and are they equipped and able to do that role? And it's often not just about meeting a dashboard or meeting the KPIs, but also making sure that the team that they're leading is happy, growing, their needs are addressed in the process of delivering on the core business out. So that's very, very important. Are we equipping managers to have those difficult conversations early on? Have we equipped our managers to really act as coaches to people? Like, think about it. An employee enters an organization for most part of their early careers, no matter what big organization you're part of, your worldview of the organization is your manager. So if your manager is great, you're going to be having a great experience and therefore probably see value in the work you do. And the opposite of that is true as well, right? The third thing that I would say HR could do is look for early leading indicators and not wait, right? Today, most systems are integrated. Most systems are capturing employee performance, sentiment, and all sorts of data, right? So are we looking at the data, things like absenteeism, participation in meetings, joining collaboration activities or not? Are they taking on internal opportunities when they come up? Are they really leveraging the internal learning and growth opportunities in the organization? It is an indicator for you to double dive on, just understand what is happening here. And that is very useful information that managers can have to go and have the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to the next buzzword or workplace trend that we've been seeing, and that is conscious unbossing. Now, research suggests that many younger professionals actually no longer aspire to become managers, right? Or to fit into that management role. Do you think conscious unbossing is a rejection of the act of leadership itself, or simply a rejection of how management has traditionally been designed and, fits into the larger workplace ecosystem?
I think it's more of the latter. It is more of a rejection of traditional management design systems and less of rejection of leadership itself. And here's why I say this, because younger professionals still want influence. They want purpose. They do want autonomy. They want to drive impact. Now, think about these four words. They are very strongly associated with what a leader is able to deliver. It's just that for most of at least my career, I think leadership has been associated to a title or a position. And therefore, there is a common understanding among most of us that leadership means leadership management. That is probably a stronger association to what conscious unbossing is trying to uncover. It is talking about how younger generation probably do not want to be commanded and controlled, right? But it's not that they don't want to play a leadership role or work with people who are able to influence great work and drive value. Like you said, are we really rejecting leadership itself? I don't think so. But yeah, is it a rejection of management as it has been traditionally known or designed? I think it's more about that. Just look at the new kind of organizations that have evolved around us in the past 10, 15 years, where innovation is the key to sustenance. The way leadership roles are unraveling is very, very different. There is a lot of empowerment given to everyone because of the skill sets that they own and not necessarily because the position they own. And that is what I think younger professionals are seeking, because if they come into the organization with certain skills, they want the opportunity to be able to apply them freely. They want the chance to share their ideas. And if there is a system or a management system that is designed to be more probably hierarchical, that becomes a problem. And that's probably what they're referring to more than anything else. So I do believe that it's more about, is it time for us to rethink the role from being an administrator to a coach, from a controller to an enabler, or from a decision maker to a capability builder? That's probably the shift.
Yeah. And I think there's also this nuance that we do have to unpack, which is as organizations become flatter and AI sort of automates a lot of this coordination, which was traditionally the manager's job, right? Leadership at the same time today matters so much more than it did before, given all of the disruption and newness that we're dealing with in the workplace. But that being said, like you just pointed out, this formal title-led manager role is mattering less and less, right? So what are your thoughts on how HR can bridge that gap between leadership being absolutely necessary, but it shows up very differently?
There's definitely a need to kind of rethink and rephrase a few things so that people understand it. See, in some organization, the shift is already happening. Now, we're calling managers, but most organizations which are led by innovation, therefore, they're very iterative and they change very, very quickly. Such organizations have already adapted this new management style, which is about empowerment and giving the opportunity to everyone with the right skills to apply and be part of the journey instead of it being hierarchical. So I think managers will be there. You have a lot of organizations today where you still have large people managing roles. And I'm not saying those are not important, but those are evolving to say that what is the role the manager is playing? The manager is now playing more of a role of, and then you have to, right? Because if you have to move faster, earlier we would talk about turnaround time of, oh, this project is going to be delivered in 2 years. Now no one talks in 2 years terms. We talk in weeks and months, right? Now, if you have to move the needle in weeks and months, you cannot do anything alone. So I think the role is evolving. And in that sense, what HR is already doing probably is separate the whole concept of leadership and management. There is management that will be needed. Systems, large organizations have policies to follow. Management continues to play a role. But leadership does not have to be restricted to that one position. Create systems where, regardless of the title or the position, there is opportunity for everyone to lead what they're doing at their level. And that is the way you will gain the collective, advantage of skills that each one comes in with. Otherwise, we're not going to optimize on everyone's skill sets and use that for the pace at which we want to move things. Perhaps another thing to be thought through is also, what are we measuring leadership on? And do we need to do that differently? Are we really rewarding outcomes? Like, are we just rewarding leaders on just KPIs and business outcomes? Or are we also giving enough importance to things like team growth, collaboration, psychological safety, talent development, right? You're leading large teams, but, are you really owning that culture that drives everyone to feel part of the system and contribute? Lastly, I would say build leadership as a capability and not a position. The focus needs to shift from saying, hey, only you are a VP and therefore you're a leader. No, I don't think that's true anymore. Every employee should have the opportunity to lead projects, solve problems, bring in ideas, influence change, without really having to seek for approval.
Yeah, I think that's such an important differentiation that you've just brought up, which is that leadership doesn't have to rely on a title. It has to be a capability that comes from within. And like you rightly pointed out, many situations call for good leadership and not just the absolute high crisis ones. And now the final workplace trend that's on our list, I find the phrasing itself quite cute, but the circumstance is not very cute, and that's job hugging. It's being described as employees who stay put out of uncertainty rather than engagement. So someone who doesn't necessarily love their work, but loves the security that work brings. How do you think HR can distinguish healthy retention from hidden stagnation? Because, if someone is job hugging, they're not necessarily going to be obvious about it, right? So how does HR solve that mystery?
Well, that's an interesting question. And, it did get me thinking. Here's the first thing I would say. We often get stuck on the word retention, right? Because it is a measure of success. If you're retaining your talent, that means obviously you're doing something right. But what we fail to understand is that actually retention is an outcome. It's not a success measure. It's an outcome of something else that is happening, right? And to your point, unless you really deep dive into that term, I don't think we would know who is really job hugging and who is really staying because they love the company, they find it valuable, they're contributing, and they're, feeling part of a big change, etc. What we fail to often look at, or sometimes is difficult to find too, right? Like there are hidden stagnations that come as different signals. That's how I think organizations can figure out who's job hugging and who's really the success measure of retention, right? Who falls into which bucket? There could be people, long tenured people with little change in role. Do we even look at those people, right? If there is less internal movement, despite having opportunities in the organization, that's another signal. Like there are options, but no one wants to take them. I am very happy where I am and doing whatever I'm doing, right? Or I don't take advantage of any learning opportunity or reskilling. And currently, I think a lot of that is surfacing because there's so much focus on reskilling as organizations, not just for individuals, but even organizations are talking about, are we building the right capabilities? And obviously, if each member of the company does not do that, then collectively we will kind of fail, right? Then employees who are doing just bare minimum to stay. So the question is really, are people staying because they're committed to the future of the organization, or is it because they're uncertain of their own? And that, I think, is job hugging. This distinction matters for HR to understand, because that is how you will be able to, really figure out who are the right people and are we really retaining the right people. It's tough to do because there's so many nuances like that. We're talking about human beings, right? It would also be wrong to just look at data of some of the scenarios I mentioned and say, hey, they fall in this bucket. And so they could be job hugging. And so let's have conversations. No, I don't think that's the answer. And hence I say it's complicated. And again, I don't even think it's an HR alone problem. It is every manager's concern to know how much do I know my people? And then am I really sure of the value they're gaining out of this engagement or this role? If not, what can I do? And I'll come back to really saying that as managers, we all need to start asking more questions. Very often we feel that, oh, there is no noise here. That means no news is good news. So let it lie low. But there could be something going on. And in this busy day and age, we sometimes tend to overlook these scenarios. And I think that's where the differentiation lies. Are we talking to our people enough? Especially in the AI era, perhaps the most meaningful talent metric won't really be retention, but, renewal. How consistently are employees learning, growing, reinventing themselves so that they are really resilient? So this is more really about, are you resilient in the job market? Whether you leave the company or not leave, as an individual, are you doing everything to make sure you have a resilient career? I think that's important for professionals to also take note of.
Yeah. And, that's where I was going to guide the conversation, because if we have to flip this scenario of job hugging and take a look at where the employees could possibly be coming from, right? You mentioned it's sometimes because they're unsure of their future. But I think also when you look, a big nuance, a big caveat in this conversation is when you look at the world around us, it seems like there is no certainty at all. So do you think in some ways job hugging could actually be a rational career strategy because of, the unpredictable economy, the job market? Or do you think staying too long eventually will become a bigger risk than moving? Even though you're less prepared? And, just speak to anyone who's listening to this podcast today about that aspect.
So I'll take my own example, right? My last organization, I was there for 11 years. It's pretty long.
Yeah.
But I think I did more than 5 roles in those 11 years. So again, I'll come back to saying that I don't think tenure itself should be looked at singularly, because it's okay if you're staying in an organization for a long time. I think that also means that you found the right culture fit and you're aligned with the vision of the organization. You enjoy the work you're doing and you're getting the opportunity to learn and grow and add value in a consistent way, and therefore you're staying. So that's actually not a bad thing. It's a good thing. But yes, job hugging is a little different, where you're staying, but you're really not doing more than just enough and just lying low. And that's dangerous. And I would say that that is more dangerous for the individual than the employee. You could think that given the, environment around us, that is a strategy you're trying to apply to keep your job security. But honestly, that is, in my view, a very short-term approach. Because in the long term, something will catch up. And what makes us more susceptible to risk as individuals is our inability to cope, adapt, and learn. Especially in this evolving and changing, ecosystem that we are in, right? There's so much uncertainty. The only way we all can, and therefore I'll talk less about just staying with the same company. Just look at yourself and say that, are you able to reinvent yourself? Because the world has reinvented itself so much, right? And especially, I'm a learning professional. And if I look at my just journey in the last 15, 20 years, the skills that I started my career using are no more relevant today. Now, if I had, for example, sat down and said that, hey, I've done my certification, I've got the best degree, and it should drive me through my career, I would have struggled, right? But as individuals, I think we need to be a little more open to the idea that technology is changing the way we work. So I do believe that I think as individuals, even if you think job hugging is something that you're resorting to in the short term, while you figure out what's happening and know what is your game plan here, I think we need to be honest to ourselves that we all should embrace the fact that the world is evolving. There are things that are changing and out of our control, but there are few things that are in our control. We can still choose to learn. We can still choose to take advantage of the opportunities given to us, as long as we're okay with the change and as long as we accept that change is going to be part of life. I think that's more important. And for everyone who's starting out a career or in the middle of their, peak of career and wondering what they want to do next, I think that's what it is. I'm hearing so many professionals today who are reinventing themselves after 20 years of working. It's amazing, right? So it's not impossible. And there is far more resources and opportunities for us to do it faster today than a decade ago.
Yeah, and that's such a hopeful note to end the conversation on. We are reaching the tail end of it, and I thought I'd put you on the spot a little bit by asking you to predict the next workplace buzzword that you think HR leaders will be talking about in 2027. What do you think is going to be the main underlying shift that people are going to be grappling with as the year draws to a close?
That's an interesting one. I think the underlying need for the buzzword, first I'll talk about that. I think that clearly is going to be how humans are going to create value alongside AI.
Okay.
We've been talking about it, of course, but this is not going away. So that's going to be the underlying need. So buzzwords, I can think of a couple. Definitely considering I'm from the capability background, I keep thinking about this. I think we're going to think about terms like capability compounding. Basically, how are we going to focus on employees who continuously build new skills and are able to continue to deliver value time and again? So
right.
Career resiliency, right? Stop looking for job security, look at career resiliency as a primary talent strategy. That's one. So think about career compounding. I think the other one, we spoke a little bit about it and I want to double click on it, would be leadership density. I don't know if these words are already talked about, but when I say leadership density, I was talking about the fact that make organizations have more people who are able to lead than necessarily people just in leadership positions.
Mm-hmm.
So, organizations need to be able to influence. So more people in the organization should have the ability to influence. I think that's going to be very, very critical, specifically as we figure out how are humans going to create value alongside AI.
Capability compounding sounds like it's right around the corner, to be quite honest, if it hasn't already landed on the internet. But thank you so much, Rajlakshmi, for joining us. What a wonderful, enriching and enlightening conversation. I think it gives us a moment to pause. And, buzzwords, the other thing about them is they're super short, right? So you consume them very quickly and they sit somewhere in the back of your head. But, you realize once you really dive into it, there's so much to think about that comes with these buzzwords. And I think conversations like this give us a moment to reflect on everything, the predecessor to the buzzword. So thank you so much for being here, for bringing all of that to our attention. Lovely conversation.
Thank you.
This is Great FM, a podcast series by Great HR. Produced by Timber Media.